finally arrived. We are going to be painting the Dread Waters. Haha. Alright, now I know the White Dwarf article says to start with Regal Blue, then Enchanted Blue, followed by Ice Blue, and then of course a little bit of dabs of Skull White. I'm going to suggest, if you do have the foundation paint Necron Abyss, to start with that first. Mainly because if you start with the Regal Blue first, you're just going to have to add 2 or 3 layers to get a solid coat. And using the Necron Abyss first will save you 1 or 2 layers time. Because it really lays down nice and smooth. And pretty much in a solid coat the first time around. Let me orient myself here so you can see what I'm doing. You can use a nice big brush for this. We're just painting the water bases. So don't need anything small and fancy. You can even use a bigger brush. And of course, those of you using an airbrush, this will be done in all of 5 seconds. But you get the idea. It's pretty solid. Just the one coat of the Necron Abyss. And while you're doing the bases, also take into account the terrain that we've painted. There's pretty much water on every piece, so you're going to want to hit that as well. And do it all at the same time, that way it saves time. You don't have to go back later and do it. Like I'm going to have to do. As you can see, I have yet to apply my bleach bone and skull white layers from last week. And I will get to it, of course. Here's what we got going on so far. So you can see you don't really get any brush strokage. It's really solid. This is why I like the foundation paint line. Just saves time. And again, if you have an airbrush, that just saves the ultimate in time. But, you know, to each their own. If you want to invest in an airbrush, feel free. It's always good for that crucial basing step, which is what this is. Just your base color. Now, we're going to try to match the White Dwarf bases. And hopefully it will match the playmat by the time we're finished. Now the next layer after the Necron Abyss will be the Regal Blue. Now don't worry if you don't have the Necron Abyss. You can certainly just start with the Regal Blue. But you're just going to want to apply 1 or 2 layers, or maybe even 3 layers, to get that nice solid laydown. The base coat must have a nice solid laydown. So just slap that paint on and spread it around. Don't have to get fancy. Now, on some of these bases you're going to run into debris, like here, or little sea creatures or whatever. You can go ahead and paint those blue. Don't even worry about it. And after the water, once we're done with the water bases, guess what? That's right, we're going to get to move on to doing the ships. I think the first ship we're going to be starting will be the swordfish. That ship seems to be the easiest. And we will start a ship and finish a ship. So we'll be working on the entirety of it. We'll be working on the body and the masts and sails. So that by the end you'll have a completed ship. So we won't bounce around as much as we did with the terrain. Well, I'm not exactly sure how far to get into this terrain here. I'm always worried about the plastic not connecting very well, but I'm going to paint it really thinly in these little holes and sockets here for the ghost ship. Alright, I have a dry piece already, which is base layered with Necron Abyss. So you see, quite nice, quite solid. The next step will be, oh, hang on, I forgot something crucial. And that would be the sides of these bases. Don't forget the sides. Alright, but after you're done with that, grab yourself some Regal Blue. Okay, so grab your Regal Blue, and I'm pretty much going to do the same thing. Just going to put down a solid base layer. Now the Regal Blue isn't that much different looking than the Necron Abyss. So kind of remember where you're starting on your piece. That way you won't have to go over and over the same stuff you've already painted. My pug snores in each and every one of my videos. She has such a hard life. Try not to have any paint clump up or anything in these little recesses here, or this well, if you will. This is the base for the Shade Wraith. So just watch it, make sure you don't get too much paint pooling or anything in the well. And again, any debris you come across, you can paint it blue. It's not really going to make that much of a difference. We're going to paint over it. And if it's got a slightly blue tinge to it, when we do paint over it, so much the better. Because the debris has been floating around in the water for some time. Alright, so the first dry brushing layer, and again, just grab yourself some paint, wipe off most of the excess for dry brushing. Now the first dry brushing layer can be heavy-handed, and of course by that I mean you could go harder than you would for successive layers. You don't mind being more messy with this layer. Really jamming that brush and essentially, you know, ruining the brush. Let's see, kind of see where I'm going with this. Get some more paint here. And a lot of the detail is going to start popping out, which you'll notice when you do this. It's going to pop out real nice. You can kind of hear my brush, and I mean, you can see how torn up this thing is. It is demolished, but perfect for this kind of thing. Get a little bit more paint off there. I really want this center detail here to stand out for the shade wraith. I'm willing to go a little bit heavier, heavier enchanted blue on there. And I'm not going to paint the sides, just dry brushing. Just dry brushing the water. And let's see, just about do it. And I'll get you a close-up. Alright, so both of these pieces have had the enchanted blue dry brushing treatment. You can kind of see how the detail's really popping out. I know my lighting is a little bit harsh, so the reflections on the water might be preventing you from seeing some of this detail, but you can see in here how much detail there actually is on these pieces. Very nice. There you go. Now the next layer will be a lighter handed dry brushing of ice blue. So me land lovers, are you privy to what comes next? That's right, ice blue. Basically doing the same. Although with this layer you're going to want to use a little bit lighter hand and focus a little bit more on these ridges. Or, if you're like me, you just go over everything the same. Just kidding. Like I said, I'm not very good at dry brushing, so I'm just going over everything with the ice blue instead of just the ridges. But if you want to be a purist to the white dwarf, then just go over these ridges as much as possible and avoid getting it everywhere, like what I'm doing. I don't mind getting it everywhere, so that's what I'm doing. I know you've been waiting for this video for quite a while, but I have to say, I had a big weekend. Halloween, of course. And family comes first, mates. I'm gonna take my little guy trick-or-treating. And he really, really enjoyed dressing up. This is the first year he's actually gotten into it, because now he's 3 and he kind of gets it. He actually got to choose what he wanted to be, even. And no, I didn't thrust my desires upon him and dress him like the little scallywag pirate he is. That will come later, when he's older. Okay, now for this base, you might want to avoid getting the ice blue in this big well recess here. As you can see, I'm putting it in there. It just depends how dark you want that to be. We're going to be pooling a lot of the washes in here anyways, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the ice blue in here because it's going to be washed out anyway, and you're going to be able to see a little bit more detail through that wash if you go ahead and add the ice blue. But again, it's up to you if you want it to be like a solid looking shadow of the shade wraith, or more like the water parted, if I'm making any sense there. I'm going to go for the looks like the water parted effect, as well as a little bit of that shadow effect. So I'm kind of going for both ideas. But I've seen excellent versions done where this whole interior was not as detailed as the exterior waves, and that looked pretty good. Like I said, I'm just going to go and detail everything. Alright. Alright, I think I'm done with this layer. Now I can show you a close-up. And here we are with the close-up. Kind of see the nice effect we're achieving, even though I suck at dry brushing. Yours probably will look even better than mine. Now, here was the original Necron Abyss foundation paint layer. This was the Regal Blue applied over the foundation. And that's our layer of Enchanted Blue dry brushing. And now with the Ice Blue dry brushing. You can kind of see the effect all together. Let me get a better shot. Alright, so here's a little bit more clear shot of all of them as a group. Now the next thing we're going to do is the Skull White. At this point, the White Dwarf article will suggest doing a Bedaub Black and Thraka Green wash. I'm actually going to do that after the Skull White step. Personally, I want to do just a little bit more of a highlight with the skull white after the wash is applied, and I want that extra little bit of shading, which I can achieve by adding the skull white now and then washing and then touching up again with skull white after applying the washes. But if you want to stick with the White Dwarf article, now would be the time when you'd want to get your 2 washes out and go ahead and do that. The scabrous we're going to take a look at after we're done with a standard base. The scabrous we need to pay a little bit more attention to, and not merely because of the organs, which we'll get to when we actually work on the scabrous ship as a whole, but going to focus a little bit on this water section and the guts and blood and gore trail that it's leaving. Before we move on to the skull white, a few of you more savvy pirates might have noticed on the official Games Workshop Dreadfleet images there's some green on the water bases. Now, I suggest at this stage, if you want that effect, to go with snot green. And you apply it, same as the rest, just dry brushing, in small areas. You don't want it everywhere. Kind of like this. I'll show you a close-up in a second. Just pick a place and dry brush in that particular localized area. If you want a little darker, you can add a little bit more green towards the center. And then fan out from there. And I'll show you a close-up. And here you can see how nice that looks. And here's one I've already finished up. It's dry. Adds just a little bit more to the base before we get, of course, to the skull white, which is right now. Are we ready for the next step? That's right. Skull white. I'm not looking forward to this step. Let's see how it goes. You have to be a little bit more specific on where you're dry brushing for this step. I'm going to get a different brush, one that's a little bit less ruined, hopefully. Wish me luck. Grab some white, wipe some off. Let's try this part first, since that will be easiest. Now you're going to want to keep the white to the edges of these waves. Muggsy, stop snorting in my ear. Ah, I'm chickening out. There we go, kinda. Like I said, you will probably have an easier time of doing this than me, because there's just something with me and dry brushing. I don't know. This center part is nice and easy though. Just make it foamy. maybe it won't be so bad. Let's do a close-up of that, see how that is here. How close can I get? It's not so bad. Not as crisp and clean as I normally like, but we'll take care of that during the final step. So I'll just keep doing that and then show you a close-up when done. And there we have it. Looks pretty good. Now on this piece I stayed out of the well here for the skull white. And here's comparing to the previous stage. Quite a difference in the appearance. And now we can have fun with the washes. Okay, I've mixed up my Thraka green and Badab black wash. More like not so much 50-50. I added a little bit more of the Thraka green than black. Maybe say 75-25 perhaps. Somewhere in there. You don't have to be precise. And then just have at it. Hard to do it one hand. But the well that I'm painting for this piece, I intend to be darker anyway, so if I slop a little more wash in here than, you know, anywhere else, it's fine. And let me just show you what happens when I'm done covering this with wash. And here we are, very nice, but still extremely wet. I'm going to have to wait for this to dry to get the final effect. Alright, we're relatively dry now. I'm not really all that happy with the outcome of this. I have a slight confession to make, me buckos. I kind of foresaw that this might happen. The Thraka green and Badab black, I was kind of curious why White Dwarf chose those colors. I'm surprised I didn't use a Sermon blue wash. But no matter. I did use a little bit more green in my wash, if you remember. It was more like 75-25 compared to 50-50 mix. So it's kind of understandable why this is a little bit more green than I would like it to be. But even so, I think it's very dark. It's an extremely dark wash. Now, in the magazine, it specifically says use a very heavy wash. And by heavy, it's pretty much just like what we just did. Just splattering a nice thick layer of wash down. Well, it's a little bit dark. And I'll show you what I mean in a second here. Okay, so I finally opened up the playing mat for Dreadfleet, as you can see. Haven't even unfolded it. And just testing out how this base looks. It just doesn't, I mean, it looks good. I could probably leave it like that. But it's just a little more green than I'd like it to be. So, there's a little trick. Now I'll show you how to clean this up to make it fit in better overall with this playing mat. Now mind you, the base on the left here is the step prior to using the wash. But you can see how That water is so nicely blue. It's a little too blue for the game mat, granted, but we do want to have some of that blue showing through on our piece. So, put that aside, and we're going to go back in with our ice blue and dry brush randomly here and there on our piece. Just pick a spot. Just like we did with adding green before. Brighter to the center, which means more of the dry brushing towards the center of the area you're applying to, and then spreading out. And there you go. Just a little bit of dry brushing. I focused to keep a lot of the blues closer to the edges, as well as, you know, picking out some areas like here and here a little bit with the dry brushing of the ice blue. And let's take this over to the game mat. Now I think you'll agree that looks much better on the playing surface. Looks like a better color match overall. Now there's only one step remaining, and that's to dry brush the last layer of skull white. Now for this last layer, more of the same. You keep the purest whites on the topmost parts of these waves. And also, for some of these ships that have trailing waters, let me get another piece, roughly show you what I'm talking about. This is for the dwarf ship. You'll see here, there's trailing water, you know, bubbling water. You're going to keep your whitest whites to those areas. And for the shade wraiths piece here, you're going to keep most of your brightest whites towards the center. Oh, and also towards the bow, since we've got more wave cresting towards the front of the ship. That's where we're going to throw down a lot of our whites. So, front of the ship, back of the ship, and then intermittently on the topmost crest on the side of where the ship is going to rest. So, like right in here. You get the idea. I'll show you a close-up in a second. And that's it. We are done with the base. Looking nice. Well, I shouldn't say done with the base, since we do have lots of floating debris and such on all of the bases, but, you know, the water's done. And that's pretty awesome. Here we go from the beginning. A lot of you have commented and said you liked my before and after shots, and the bases presented a great opportunity for doing that, since there are so many. So here, again, our first base, and this is base coated with a foundation Necron Abyss. And we move on here, the Scabrous base with a base coat of Regal Blue. Next we have a dry brush of Enchanted Blue, followed by the dry brush of Ice Blue. Then we went in with some Snot Green, I think it was called, Snot Green, and added a little bit randomly, and dry brushing different areas. Followed that up with dry brushing Skull White on the crests. Then we did the Thraka Green and Badab Black wash throughout. Touched up again with an Ice Blue dry brush highlight. Finally finishing up with a final dry brush of Skull White, focusing primarily on water trails, the bow of the ship and along the sides, and the cresting of the water. So there you have it. More quickie from the very start. To the very end. And here's a very distant shot of all of the bases in order. Now you can't see detail from this height, but you get a basic idea of start to finish. And here is a completed base. Well, in terms of course, just the water, not so much the bones and debris, on the playing surface. Pretty good. I think it's a fairly good match. Now the Scabrous is a unique beastie of a ship. Fish, ship, zombie fish. It's great. So I've stopped a painting up until the point where we would be applying our first highlight of Skull White, of course before the washes and all that, because now we're going to paint this nice nasty ooze trail coming out from behind the fish. Now we're not going to paint the residual trailing intestines yet. We're just going to paint the gore and slime coming out of it. So we're going to start with Dark Angel's green. I'm going to follow that up with Goblin green and I think Camo green, although Scorpion green or something lighter would work as well. Don't want to use Snot green since we've already used that for part of the water. And just going to go ahead and paint it relatively thickly on there. Don't be shy. Get in there. No. Along the outer edge of where the slime is trailing, you dry brush a little bit. Dry brush out. And there we go. Some nice looking gore already. And once this dries, we will dry brush with the Goblin green and see how that looks. Now here I dry brush the Goblin green over the Dark Angel's green. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead, I didn't show that part, but I was watching The Talking Dead that I recorded and kind of got carried away. Zombie goodness. Man, I can't believe he killed Otis, man. I mean, if you're watching the show, you know what I'm talking about, and if not, you're like, what? But, and right after Otis saved his life, too. Wow. Anyway, okay, so, next step after this is the Camo green. I'm not quite sure how the Camo green is going to work out. So, well, we'll find out together. But I like Camo green because it's just got that nasty zombie-ish skin tone to it. Let's hope for the best. Oh, that's perfect. Now, when you dry brush, the goblin green as well as the camo green stick to the center area here and here. These two areas. Because the lighter, nastier color green is still going to be seeping out of the fish. And the darker colors are going to be, of course, trailing away from the fish. Oop. I'll wipe my brush off there. So you want to focus on getting your lighter colors right by the tail end. That looks awesome. Awesomely nasty. There we go. Yeah. Alright. Now, the next stage we're going to do is do the first highlight of the skull white. Follow that up with the washes, like we did before with the other water, and so on and so forth. Oh yes, just a reminder, when you're working on the skull white highlight, like I am here, do go over the gore trail with the skull white and, of course, the black and green wash, and then touch up with the ice blue, and then again with the skull white. So, yes, definitely you can paint over the trail now. The last thing I did to the scabrous ooze, I took some white and mixed it with some camo green for a nice light camo green highlight, and dry brushed it just at the very end, right in here. So there you have it. Finished water, and oh, I went in and touched in some ball red wash just along where the intestines attach to the fish, and then trailed it off just a little bit. Just a nice little hint of life seeping out of this zombie fish. It's taken an abnormally long time to dry, but it's gonna look great. Nice and oozy, like a festering, pussing sore. Alright, I don't need to give you any more visual imagery. That's it. I know you're excited, me first mate. We're getting closer to working with the ships. Our next port of call will be the swordfish. Yes. Tune in next time, me hearties. What you got there?
Mater.
Is that a little mater? Let's see. Is that a little mater? That's a little mater. You're mater. Hey, Nick.
What?
Who are you for Halloween?
Mater.
Mater. Is he your favorite character in Cars?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see, silly boy. Don't stick your tongue out. You ready to trick or treat, Muggsy? Trick or treat. It's a pig. It's a pug. It's a pig and a pug.